Welcome to Ballsy, the podcast where I interview successful artists and creators on how they got the balls to sell their art and turn their practice into a profitable business. As a former entrepreneur turned artist, I realized that being an artist is basically like running a small startup. And you, the artist, are the CEO. I talk to artists about their businesses, talk real numbers, growth hacks, tools and tricks, and how they were ballsy enough to make that their career. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Ballsy Podcast. Today we have a very interesting artist who I actually stumbled across when I was seeing kind of their new large-scale textile work that I found particularly intriguing. Sarah Duggar. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yep.
Okay. Fantastic. So Sarah, if you would be so kind, would you just give us, I always like to start the podcast with the artist's description of themselves and where they can find you. So if people are listening, they can search along.
Yeah, sure. My name's Sarah Duggar. I'm so happy to be here. I'm on Instagram at Sarah Jane Duggar, and my website is sarahduggar.com. And that's Dugger. There's some Duggar Duggars out there, but we're the ER Duggars.
Okay. And could you give us a little bit of a description of your work? Because your work has a bunch of different stylistic components to it. We'll talk a little bit about style and art, and then we will move to what we like talking about, which is the biz.
Yeah. I started out my career in the fashion industry. I was a textile designer for Nicole Miller and was designing men's ties and ladies' scarves, women's accessories. It was really fun. And then I moved over. I went to Victoria's Secret, and that was more technical. I wasn't really doing artwork there. I would go overseas and work with the printers and work with approving screens and colors and all that kind of stuff. I also did a little bit of color and concept work there, with front end kind of design stuff. Then I met my husband in New York. We moved to San Francisco, and I started working for Pottery Barn. And that was really fun. I got back into doing art. So they had a group of painters and textile designers, and that job I really loved. And then what happened? The war happened, Afghanistan happened, and all my work dried up. Yeah, there was only one staff designer. Everybody else was freelance, and they just quit calling everybody around that time. It's freak out time, one of those weird freak out times. So I started painting, fine art painting, and got a little spot at the salami factory down the street from where we lived in Marin County at the time. And then I've been painting. Then we moved back to Ohio. So I was like Ohio to New York to California, back to Ohio. And I was
art
bored.
Capital of the world, Ohio.
Right, I know. There's more art going on here than I imagined when I was a kid. So anyway, but I came back and was bored stiff and started a little studio co-op. And in the meantime, I had a friend who invited me to a WallDogs meet. I'd never painted murals. And so I went to that and was like, whoa, what? I love the scale of mural making. It was just fun. And started painting murals all over the place. And in the meantime, I shut down the co-op and wound up inheriting these two giant tables. And I thought, gosh, why am I not printing again? I spent my degree, I have a degree in surface design and textiles. And I thought, God, good grief, I should get this together. So I started putting together a little print studio, which took forever. I had nothing. I had to go build a table, find a light box. You need so much equipment for screen printing.
People don't realize how much. I was a screen printer for a long time. People don't realize how much it takes.
So much. Yeah. And it's one of those, just a process-driven thing. It's not hard. None of it is hard particularly, but you got to figure out all those steps. And so I swear to God, I was one of the last people to get a degree in art and not have to do a single thing on the computer. I don't work on the computer. I don't have the sensibility for it. Sitting there just makes me I can't do it. I've tried, which is unfortunate because the whole textile industry has gone.
It's gone. Yeah. Because you can make the repeat patterns so instantly.
Boom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for those who
Yeah.
don't know, if you do surface pattern design, you basically design a square that magically hooks up with every other square. And when
Yeah.
you had to do that by hand, it was a nightmare. And when you have to do it on a computer, it's automatic.
I know. I still do it the nightmare way. So I do everything by hand. I do all my repeats. Like I start with pencil and then I paint. I know. I love it though. It's one of those things, once you have the system down, it just, everything falls in a system. So I paint my own films and I have this hillbilly. I mean, it is just glued together that my light box, I traded somebody a painting for it, and it's like it's got no lid, there's no vacuum, and I've got milk jugs on the top and foam and all this stuff. But I get it done. It makes the screens and I can do it. And yeah, so I can print 7 yards of fabric in my studio here.
Yeah, that's what I saw. I saw those kind of big pen things you were doing. It actually looks like there's a graffiti artist, I think Risk, who does like these big things on walls that have a similar vibe. But I thought it was like super cool.
Yeah. So that I learned from, I went to go print with Tim Eads for a weekend. He's a master printer. He worked at the fiber, somewhere in Philly, a textile museum or something like that. And he's since become like a tufting guy. He sells rug tufting guns.
Okay.
And I think he's not doing any printing anymore. He's tufting the world. In fact, I think that's his Instagram now, is Tuft the World. But I went to go print with him for a while, and he taught me that technique. I think it's an old one. I saw pictures of people like doing it with giant coffee cans, filling up a big thing with medium, and yeah.
Very cool. So let's go, now that we have an understanding about your journey, when you started making fine art. I'm always curious at the point when people are like, and you were design, so it was like art adjacent. But at what point did you quit or were you stopped working in corporate and then just did this? Or were you making art and selling art and being like, I don't need to do corporate anymore?
I had to learn how to paint on the job. I spent all of my schooling silk screening. And I can draw. Drawing is my thing, really, more than painting. But I had to learn how to paint on the job. And it was always just a need more than I wanted to do it. And when I stopped working in industry, I thought, gosh, I should start exploring painting, and got a studio and started working. And there was a fella there named Paul Brigham. He started the studio, and he's such a great guy, an amazing painter, amazing artist. And I was watching him going, oh, gosh, I love this. Like just being able to do what you want to do, not what sales dictate and what somebody comes in and tells you what to do. And so I thought, boy, I'd never really thought of art that way. Oddly enough, just doing it, there's always like some kind of purpose. I really think at my core, I'm like an unapplied artist. It's got to be a reason.
It's funny you say that. I was industrial design as my background. So it was like sculpture with purpose. That's the way I always thought about it. There had to be like art for art's sake. There was always something about that was like, I just couldn't bring myself that far. And so that was like the acceptable substitute. And only now, later in life, did I realize that I should have been just doing the art stuff from the beginning.
Oh, boy. Yeah. Yeah.
So you start painting. And did you start selling work right away? Or what did you do in terms of building the business of selling art? And then we're going to get into the different things you do in a minute.
So I didn't start selling right away. It really took me a long time. I want to say probably 12 years of figuring out, because I'm interested in everything. And I don't know, I feel oftentimes in my studio like I'm just a cat batting around a ball and trying this and trying that. And I liked this for a while. And it took me a while to put it together, to get in a groove where I was like, oh, this is my thing. This is how I like to stack these blocks. But here's what happened recently. So I had a studio mate, this is back in Ohio. I had a studio mate who had an opportunity to start a gallery in Southampton and during COVID. She lived there years ago, and then she was back in Ohio, and her name's Jennifer Cantini. She's amazing. She said, I have this opportunity to go into a space in Southampton. She had this gallery. She had a little space here in Ohio, and well, it wasn't that little. It was pretty big. She's a bit of a gypsy. Anyway, she said, I've got this opportunity in Southampton. Do you want to do it with me? And I said, sure, let's go. She hauled everything out there. She got a little group of artists together. And she said, I've got this wall. There was a wall that had something on it that she couldn't move. She needed a big painting for it. She said, will you paint me a giant dot for this wall? And I said, oh, yeah, I'll do that. But I started thinking about it. I thought, I'm going to paint a huge lobster. Painted this lobster. And instead, I thought, I don't know, dot's not moving me. And did some studies and did this big lobster and sent it out. And everything sold for the first season. And so that's what kicked it off. And then Rick Friedman wound up wandering into the studio and said, hey, I've got this thing called the Hamptons Fine Art Fair. You should be in it. And invited the gallery to the Hamptons Fine Art Fair. So we went there. That's been over the last 3 years, that's really when my paintings have
really taken off.
Taken off, yeah.
It's a nice feeling, isn't it?
Oh, it's so nice. It's amazing, but I feel like you can't rest in it too long because now what happened was my price points jumped like almost instantaneously.
Can you talk about that? What was your price point? And then once you hit the Hamptons, what is your price point? What does that curve look like?
It's not really a curve. So I was at 50 cents a square inch, and then I went up to $4.25 a square inch.
Oh.
So
you're on square inch. I'm still on square feet. Fuck, I got to go to square inches.
You know what I do? After 8 feet, I go to feet.
Okay.
So,
I like that.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard that one. But see, by the way, this is why I do the podcast, because I learned something cool. Because the smaller works, I feel like need a higher price point, but the math doesn't really work out so good.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Okay.
What do they call that? Group genius.
Yeah.
Isn't that how we are? Yeah. Anyway, so what I was going to say was that once you make that jump, I'm like, holy mackerel, I got to keep this ship rolling. You know what I mean? So it's been 3 years, and I just had this past season, I had a great season, but I decided not to go forward with the gallery. It's hard to be in business with friends. And so I'm going to forge out on my own here and start to do some fairs. I'm looking at fairs, and it's hard to find gallery representation. I think there's a lot more artists than there are galleries.
1,000%. But we also live in a time now where like that model of giving half of your income to somebody else because they have a store is you can own and that's one of the things I talk about, which is that I find the most interesting. And I speak to dozens of different artists, and they have dozens of different ways of doing it. Some are strictly gallery. Some are absolutely no gallery. Some are some sort of hybrid. Some are fine works, but their print business is really where they make their money. There's a bunch of people what artists are just driving their own paths these days. And that's what I find really fascinating is like all of these different business, because 10 years ago, there was one business model. You either get in a gallery or you didn't. And if not, you had a hobby, right? And now that's just not the case anymore.
Yeah.
So I know this is what I talk about. This is what I like to talk about. So that's a perfect segue. So you make a lot of different type of things. So what sort of stuff do you make now? There's prints, there's textiles, there's murals. Give us the gamut of your exploration, your work, and then the channels of which you sell each one.
My work is cyclical with the weather. So I typically do more murals in the summertime here in Ohio. It just gets too cold for me to do it outside it in the winter and the fall. And so I find that my murals are my best marketing. So that's how that has worked, which I love. I love getting eyeball. I love when somebody picks up the phone and calls me. It just doesn't come naturally to sit and find work on the computer. It's amazing and it's possible, but I seem to be able to find it with people who are around me.
Real world marketing as opposed to digital and online marketing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that'll get into winter, and then I'll start printing more. Okay. And until now, I haven't pushed my printing too much, mostly because I have not had a way to set my inks, to cure my inks.
Okay.
But I just changed. That just changed. I found a fella up in Cleveland who is super nice. He's got a print shop called Ohio City Print, and he has a wide belt dryer. So I'm going to just pay him to go up and use his dryer when I need. So I'll print for a month and then just take all my yardage up there one day and just send it all through. So that's going to open up that'll open things up for me in terms of pushing sales of textile yardage. And then
that's printing actually a roll of custom textile, basically. So you basically take a what's it called? The big roll, I guess. You take the big roll, you print a ginormous roll of custom hand done textiles. You get it set, cured, and then you sell that to pattern makers and to dressmakers. People could then buy that fabric.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And so I don't know where I'll end up. I don't know if I'll end up more fashion kind of people or interior kind of folk, but where I'm headed with that is finding people who want textiles that they can't find at market. I've done a little bit of work working for people like with their logos and their branding and stuff like that. And I like that kind of work, but I'm only one person. I don't have any studio assistants or anything like that. So for me, I don't think I'm going to pursue that much because it's they get very picky. I need someone who's looking for textiles as artwork rather than
The riches are in the niches. That's like a very specific. It's just probably not that many people doing like fine art textile at scale. Cool. That's super cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's what drew me to you is those you're doing with the line patterns that go over each other. I thought was really cool.
Yeah, they look great. I'm dying to see them in a garment. I do have a gal that I work with. Her name's Ann Tilley. She lives in North Carolina. She's a technical pattern maker.
Okay.
And because people will ask me, I'll print all this fabric and they'll go, oh, what do you do with that? And I'm always like, it's fabric. You do with it anything you could do. I guess because I don't sew, people, maybe they mean, what am I going to do with it? And I'm like, honestly, after it's printed, I'm done. I'm on to the next. Right. I like the printing, that part of it. But I thought maybe I should make something. So I made these little moo-moos and she designed the pattern for me. And then she has a tiny little team of women who can sew. So she had a little small production house going. It was amazing. It was great. And actually, I have a funny story. There was I met a woman from Larchmont. She was just one of the most beautiful women I've ever seen. And she has this boutique and she said, we should talk. And she gave me her name and she said, I can sell these moo-moos. And I sent them to her on a consignment basis without getting any money up front, and she stole them. So the only really production that I have ever been in, half of my inventory just was stolen.
There you go. Lessons learned. Oh my God, that's the worst.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm sorry about it. Aside from stolen merchandise, you do fine art paintings still.
And then fine art paintings, yes, which I just started in with prints. It never made sense for me to do prints before because my originals were really affordable. But now I'm in a spot where it makes sense to do prints. Yeah. So I'm going to do a show in Florida in December, and that's going to be my first crack. I just picked up a whole huge stack of prints, and that'll be my first kind of scary I think, prints. I guess I could do on demand, but I went ahead and ordered a bunch to take to this show. And so, I don't know, fingers crossed.
Yeah, I've talked to different people who do prints in different levels and scale and all sorts of different ones. Some on demand. There's one Israeli artist I interviewed who finally found the print studio next to her house, a print shop. It's near her so she could control because the print on demand the quality wasn't where she needed it to be. But she does big volume. 7 figures a year in prints.
Holy moly. Wow.
So that if you find the right niche for it, you can do some really awesome stuff there.
Yeah. I'm hoping.
So you do prints, you do fabrics, you do paintings, you do murals.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
And they all just kind of cycle through. And so I'm looking through the year, really. And I have 3 kids, so I'm really routine driven. So my year is really structured by what they're doing too,
School.
their schedule, school. And so somehow I keep it together. I feel like art is the kind of job where you really have to show up every day, every single day, whether you want to or not. And eventually that works out. Just showing up, getting there, getting it done.
By the way, you are one. If you show up every day and just do a little bit, not wait for the mood and not wait for this, and just actually do the work, that's it. That's how it gets done. I also find on top of that, the more mistakes I make, the better my work gets.
Oh,
Each
yeah.
mistake leads into something really cool. And so the things I thought were, I go in with one direction and I come out as another, and that always seems to work well for me. Now, so I'm going to go through each one of these kind of your segments of work real quick. So your mural, I'm going to start with murals because I'm always fascinated by big things. And so how do you get mural gigs? Do you go talk to someone who has a building, or do they come inbound to you? Like, how does one find a mural gig?
Inbound to me. I did one. There was a fella who wanted a big mural in an alley, and I was wanting to try one, and I said, I'll do it. It was big. It was like, I don't know, 16 feet by 30 feet or 20 feet, something like that. It was pretty big. And I just said, I'll do it. I'll just jump down and did it. And from there, people found me. There's a fella who's an anthropologist around town, and I wound up doing a lot of murals for him, kind of history murals, different things around town. And then some local boutique found me from that. And so they seem to come to me.
That's cool. And how do you price those? Do you treat it more of this is advertising, so I don't do it for that much money? Or do you how do you look at that scope of business?
Yeah, I charge by the foot, and I just measure it, and then I charge by the square foot. I do $30 a square foot.
Nice. Yeah, on big things that adds up.
Yeah,
Do they have to supply? Do they have to supply paint on top, or is that part of the cost?
I used to do there. Yeah, there's a materials cost, but it has come down. What I found is because I always wind up with extra, so where I can cut a little bit for a client, and so I do charge for materials.
You're not spray paint. You're like all by hand.
Yeah. Yep.
Can you just wing it?
I project, or I do a doodle grid.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I still have. I've never actually pulled one of those off. I still feel like I need to just to experience it.
They're the best thing ever. It's really. I think I would prefer to do a doodle grid.
Interesting.
Then you don't have to wait for nighttime and all that with projecting.
And so now with paintings, you did your gallery stuff in the Hamptons, but other than that, what is it, mostly web? Like, what are your sales channels, if you will, for selling these types of things?
Yes, my website and Instagram, and the gallery. Yeah. And then the gallery, and then the fair, which I'm hoping to get into here. I'm fascinated with that scene. My work went for 3 years to the Hamptons Fine Art Fair, but I never went until this past year, and I loved it. I loved the whole scene. It was so fun.
You strike me as the person who would be very fair, like chit-chatting with people and having the personal relationship with the work and the collector.
Yeah, I love it. I started doing this crazy thing this year. Some of my work is not particularly edgy. I do a lot of florals. I love flowers. I just adore flowers, and print and pattern and textile designs. Sometimes that gets a little flat and it's not particularly edgy. So I thought, geez Louise, what could I do that's like edgy? And I go, I'm going to break rule number 1. I'm going to make it so you have to touch the art. You have to literally dig through the art to find the art underneath. So my latest thing that I'm doing is these pieces that are completely covered in beads, down to the floor, like a huge waterfall of beads. And you have to dig through. And underneath, there's all this embroidery and felt applique and silk screen. And I've created a composition with textiles underneath there. But I'll tell you what I loved about it was I loved talking with the people who came by. And I'd be like, hey, you can touch this. And they go, what? what, really?
Right, because you're not allowed to touch the art.
Because you're not allowed to. And I go, yeah, you got to touch it. And they dig. And then this whole conversation would start. And it was just, so I don't know. That to me, out of all these things, the textiles, the murals, the paintings, I think that feels the most authentic to me. I think maybe that's my groove that I'm going to pursue. I don't know.
Oh, I didn't even ask about sculptures. Technically, that feels like it's just bordering on sculpture.
Kind of, yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, please go with. I didn't even see those works. Are
Yeah,
those on Instagram?
they are on Instagram, but they're very hard to photograph, and they're hard to get it because they're really the art is underneath,
Right.
like all these beads, and I got to figure that out.
Reels.
The best way to, yeah.
Start making reels all day long as you like climb into them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. I have to go dig it because I didn't see those. That sounds up my alley. I like interactive, participatory, where it just adds a level of experientialness to the art, which I think is really cool. I think that people expect a certain thing, so the juxtaposition of the touching, I think, is really interesting.
Yeah. The underneath part too. That's a whole other conversation.
And I haven't even seen what it is, but in my head it's going. But that seems like really cool in terms of scale and interactive exhibits and like that. And it's those type of things. The second I started doing large scale stuff, that's when everything
took off. Oh,
yeah. There's something about large scale and being able to touch and play.
Yeah.
Now, how prolific are you? How many pieces are you making a year?
Oh, a lot. I produce between everything. It's a lot of work. I don't know, maybe 50 paintings, 2 murals, yards and yards of fabric.
You're always working.
Always working. Yeah.
Now, do you end up holding a bunch of inventory or you sell most of it as it comes out or does it piles up with all sorts of stuff?
Some of it piles up and some of it goes right away. If I do some smaller paintings, some little like 8x10 gouache paintings. And when I make them, they just go. If I make things for the Hamptons, those things seem to go too for the gallery there. Textiles, I've been hanging on to my textiles a little bit because I thought, oh God, what if I send this to somebody, they put it in the washer and the whole thing cracks off or what? So
turns their phone screen.
Yeah, gosh, that's all I need. Yeah, it's about maybe 50-50.
Okay.
It piles up though.
Yeah, every artist does. Like we all. There's very few that I know that are that fortunate.
Yeah.
What percentage comes from Instagram versus gallery versus website versus like? Is it like 50, 30, 30, 30? Is it like mostly from Instagram?
Mostly from the gallery, I would say, and mostly from people coming to me to my studio.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Fascinating. All right, so you are just a hands-on. See, I'm the opposite. I'm like 95% Instagram.
Oh, wow. Maybe I'll get there. I don't know. It just seems though, the way it works for me now, it's people I know or someone who knows someone or I've met someone here. Or it's that kind of scene.
Now, do you keep are you like, and this is like nerdy back end stuff. Do you keep track of all your collectors so you can like remarket to them? Or is it like one and done? You sold it and you forgot about it? Or do you keep some sort of, and do you keep an inventory tracking system or is it just like a spreadsheet?
I have the best I can. I keep a list of people. I had for a while, I had MailChimp, but it didn't come naturally to me to use it. So that's something I need to be better about, I think, is keeping in touch with people after this. Yeah.
I was on MailChimp. Now I use one called Flowdesk.
Oh.
Which is a little artsier. It's easy it's very simple to use from a emailing perspective.
All right.
I've been futzing with that a bit.
Yeah.
And I always ask this question. Who do you do your website? Who hosts it?
Let's see.
I use Wix.
I use Big Cartel.
Oh, okay. Oh, how is that?
I like it. I've had it for years. I think it's great. I love that they remit the tax for me. Like if I sell out of state, I don't have to then I can just print that report out and I don't have to remember that and write it down, like that kind of stuff down. Yeah, I like it. It's good.
Cool.
Yeah.
I was a Squarespace guy for a long time, and then I switched to Wix. I always thought Wix was the crappy one.
Yeah.
I tried Shopify first, and that was like a little too commercial for me. And then I went to Wix, and that one seems to be running wonderfully for me. So
Yeah.
I'm so comfortable and happy.
So that's my shopping cart, Cartel. And then I have a website. But the only thing I don't like about Big Cartel is you can't tell much of a story. And with all the different things that I do, it wasn't working for just to have Big Cartel wasn't working for me. So
Okay.
I have another, it somehow linked.
Connects. Yeah.
Yeah.
You definitely strike me as like the storyteller type. Like,
Yeah.
Are there any other than Instagram and website? Are there any other platforms you use? Have you ventured into the land of TikTok or anything of this?
No, I don't have time. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Instagram eats up
content creation.
Oh, I know. It takes forever. It really does. I love it, though. There's no better waste of time than getting on Instagram. There's so many artists. And it's just, I love how people share their process and share everything. They just share all kinds of bits of their business. It's amazing.
Yeah, I spend way too much time on social and could spend probably more. Like it's digital crack. Like it's there for you had briefly mentioned before you don't have a team or anything like that. It's just you're like a solo shop. So no studio assistants in the future.
I'm hoping now that I've got a way to dry my textiles, I'd like to bring some people in for that. Is that's
bigger format stuff. It starts to get cumbersome by oneself.
Yeah. And I do have a crew that I call on with when I do murals. I have some folks that come and help me that are really amazing artists. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm new to expanding team and it's getting fun again. So
yeah.
So in your practice, what do you spend most of your money on? Is it on supplies? Is it on? You don't advertise or anything like that, do like you don't? Do
no.
So it's all like word of mouth, right? So I would assume yours is supplies, but I'll ask anyway.
Yep. It's a lot of supplies. Yeah, and I'm always trying to cut that down. It's just the big things: rent and supplies and travel. Yeah.
If you start doing a lot of shows, travel starts adding up.
Yeah. Yep.
Now, how much time do you spend actually making art versus all the things it takes you to sell the art?
What I want to, I'm probably 90% making art.
Oh, God.
And 10% on the other side. And I think that if I spent more time on the business side, I'd sell more. So this podcast has inspired me to, I think just like the showing up every day to paint, to create art, you really have to show up for the business side of it too. That's not going to do itself. If I could get that to maybe 75%, 25, something like that.
Yeah, that's what people don't realize. I always frame this pod and kind of my curiosity about this is that every artist is in essence a startup, right? It's a small business of some capacity. Some are bigger, more scaled, some are smaller, but like the running of the business part is the hard part, right? And for most artists, it's the scary part. Artists are cool making stuff, but not cool turning that into a business.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, I got to tell you, Shawn, the thing that's been lovely about this podcast is for me, it's always a language barrier. I don't have business language. The words, it's not in my wheelhouse. I don't. But to hear artists talk about business this way, somehow it's very inspiring.
Yeah. Look, it's all the same basic things. There's production, there's marketing, there's inventory management, there's sales. You have like those categories, but as artists, we often don't think about them that way, right? We just, it happens when it happens, or, I did one. And so like to formalize it a little bit can often, and if you're good at, I just happen to be horrible at segmenting my time, but if you can actually segment your time out and do it correctly, it can do leaps and bounds to your business.
Yeah, I can see that. So I want to say now I'm probably 90%. Coming into a studio is like coming into Oz. It's the most amazing place you've ever been to. You paint and brushes and paper, canvas. Why would I spend my time sitting in front of a spreadsheet like in a studio?
Yeah, I'm down to, I'm like flip the other way right now just because I have like so many large scale projects going on. I'm down to like 25% making art, if that.
Oh boy.
Like,
Oh boy.
I have to
Yeah.
like find time to physically do it.
Yeah.
And it's like an email will turn into a meeting, which will turn into keep it as long as you can.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see that it's important. That part of it is very important. And if you spend more time on it, I think things come together.
In terms of your craft and your skill, you obviously have tons of experience over the years. Do you ever take additional classes to pick up new skills or to pick up new things? You had mentioned you went to other people's studios to work. Do you keep that in your wheelhouse?
Yeah, I do. I love learning from other artists. And I think coming up, my first job was in a design studio. All my first jobs were in design studios working with other artists. And I just work the best by learning and seeing and doing. Reading about things doesn't really do it. I like to go learn when I can. Aeromont has been a really amazing place to go learn some new stuff. There are 3 schools: Aeromont, which is in Gatlinburg; Haystack, I think, is in Maine; and Penland is in North or South Carolina. They're these art and craft schools that you can go to. They have a rotating group of artists who teach and who I can't say enough about them. They're just, you go for a week. It's like art camp, really, but it's like legit, like serious professional art camp.
Yeah, that's cool. I love stuff like that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like going, seeing how other people work, seeing how other people create, learning just learning things that would take you a zillion years to pick up and that someone can just tell you.
Right. Yeah. It's for textiles. It's been great because there's textile studios got like all the equipment, and then you're in with all these other people who are doing it, and you can learn tricks, and it's good. It's very good.
Yeah. Like I said, I used to do a lot of silkscreen work, and I used to live in New York City. And so the greatest tool there in the world was what was it? Not Parsons. It was what are the art schools there basically had
Pratt?
a silkscreen floor. No, it was on. Why can't I remember? That's embarrassing.
FIT?
As soon as I stop thinking about it, I'll remember it. But they had a silkscreen studio that basically paid for the course, but then you had access to the studio 20 hours a day plus all the materials.
Oh,
and
nice.
So basically, I just moved in.
Yeah.
And so I would spend 12 hours a day there, and like heaters and the printers and the inks and the teachers and the free studio assistants, because someone would, like a TA would come help you out. And it was like, oh yeah, this is the way to do it.
Yeah.
And then when you go to the real world and you're like, I have to buy all this stuff?
I know. It's astounding how expensive it is. So,
yes, that is the truth. So as we start coming towards the end of this thing, because we're almost an hour in here, I like to ask a bunch of questions about things you've learned along the way, because I would assume a lot of people watching this are artists who haven't made it yet or are starting to make it, or what that, to me, the interesting part is that journey, like when it goes parabolic. Like if you could look back on your art career, like the 2 questions I always ask: what was your biggest mistake and what was your greatest success?
Biggest mistake, I think if you set up a system for yourself, you set up parameters, and then you break those parameters, that's been a mistake. Like with the gal who stole my stuff. Like I said, I'm not going to give my stuff for free. That was just a thing. I don't give artwork to any. It's a business. There's got to be an exchange. And I don't know, something in me said, I don't know, maybe this could be really great. Like, why don't you go ahead and do it? And sure enough, boom, all that was gone. So I think, which I guess is tied into your gut. If you have a gut instinct, stick with your gut instinct. Or if you set up, I'm not giving my art away, don't give it away. Don't break your own rules.
And by the way, that is one of the hardest things for artists, like to work for free because it's art. Because don't. Like,
yeah,
get paid for your work, right? This is a gig like anything else. Like
yep. So that's a mistake.
Yeah, it's all right. But you learn from those, right? If you can wallow in them.
Yeah.
If you actually just take the lesson for what it is and now better, you pay it forward.
Yeah.
What about your success? What are like some of the best choices you've ever made?
Success.
Like, I could do that 10 times over.
Yeah. Taking risks. I think that's the biggest thing. I think that risk is all tied in with truth. And if you can get some truths under your belt, like yellow and blue are going to always make green. There's some truths within the art world that are just true. They're just always true. And if you can internalize those, know what you're working with, know about scale, know about proportion, know about all these kind of things, you can walk into any studio or art scene or whatever, and we're all using those same building blocks. And so I think taking risks is led to some of my greatest successes.
By the way, that's everybody.
Yeah.
Like that's the difference I find between those who win and those who don't. The ones who are willing to like lean out there and fall on their face.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I keep all of my rejection letters and all that kind of, like shows that I submitted to and didn't get into, things that I tried that didn't work out, all that stuff. I keep it all because it was part of the journey. You can't say that didn't attribute to the success. The failures contribute to the success. Sure. So yeah,
all of those things. I sent work not long ago to a dealer, and she's like, the quality is just not what it needs to be, and like called me out on it. And I was like, you know something? Fuck, you're absolutely correct. Like, I was like, damn it. I didn't want that to be the case, but like deep down, I knew it was true. And like someone else just put it bare, and I'm like, okay, but let me tell you, it's made my work 1,000 times better.
Yeah, I know.
Go ahead.
I got called by my first job when I was first going to work. I sent out this resume and it was horrible. I was really into punks at the time, and I was drawing all these portraits of punks. And for some reason, I put one on my resume to scale, like across 8.5 by 11, like his forehead. And I put my name on his forehead, sent this resume out to everybody, like all of the major fashion houses. Right? Businesses. Someone from Betsy Johnson called me back and said, Sarah,
we love it.
No, she said, this is a horrible resume. Don't do that. Just send your resume. You don't need to have all this drawing on here. I thought it was the coolest thing ever, but stuff like that.
Betsy Johnson is telling you that.
I know. It must have been so bad. Yeah. But yeah, all those things that are hard to hear and all that kind of stuff, there's good stuff in that. So don't let it keep you from going forward. Just keep going forward. Keep showing up.
And is there any other advice you think that, like, from your time in art and business and corporate or non-corporate, that you would give to other artists? Like,
there's room for everybody. I think that there's room for everybody. Whatever thing you're into, whatever it is, there's a place for it. And there's I don't like when art gets funny. There's a lot of tood. People get they're not thinking they're better than there's something, this isn't good, or I don't like all that. So I would say ignore that. If you're running into that kind of thing, just ignore it. There's room for everybody.
The riches are in the niches.
Yeah.
As we're finishing up here, I would just want to say thank you very much. This was a fantastic interview. I learned something, which means it's a good day already.
Right on.
And once again, just can you remind everybody where to find all your work and let them know any shows or anything that are coming?
Yeah. So Instagram is Sarah Jane Duggar, and my website is sarahduggar.com. I'm going to be in a show in Columbus coming up. There's a biennial that I got into. Okay. I'm very excited about.
Congratulations.
Yeah. And then I've got a show in December in Fernandina Beach, Florida. And there I'll have originals, but I'll have a lot of prints there too. So
now, when you do something like that, do you drive down?
I'm going to drive because I've got I've got a lot of work, so I'm going to drive down. But my daughter I have a senior, and so we're going to look at a school down there for her. So she's going to come with me, and make a field trip of it. Yeah.
It's good. So I'm always curious about, like, for shows, like, do you ship your work and then you just show up, or do you drive? Or do you go, or...
I do. I forgot. I have a show in London too that I am shipping artwork to. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. That one's cool.
Yeah, yeah. It's a 2-week show at the Brick Lane Gallery, which is one of these ones where you rent your wall space, which
Yeah.
I know a lot of artists don't think. But if you go to Scope or you go to Hampton's Fine Art Fair, you go to any of these, you pay for your
Yeah, the
booth,
gallery pays, of course.
yeah. So I go, I don't know, we'll give it a whirl.
There's a guy, Krove Blitt, who I interviewed a while back, and the majority of his business is art. He goes and he pays for a booth at an art fair, goes out with all his wares, and he's built a very successful practice doing that.
Yeah, yeah.
He considers it a marketing expense.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. Yeah. I think if you're just getting out, my husband and I happen to be in London, so we checked the gallery. It's a cool neighborhood, like it's gritty and it's just swarming with people. And I really liked it. I thought it was really cool. So I'll ship my work there. Yeah.
Yeah. And what he said is the way he looks at it, like hopefully he makes enough sales to do it at the art fair. But his comment to me was often the fair itself doesn't actually generate any revenue, but the relationships and the telephone numbers and the people he meets and the stuff he gets at that thing pay dividends throughout the years to come. And so if you actually add up all the things, like it's a very accretive event for him.
Yeah. Yeah. I get that. That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much. So nice that I stumbled across your work.
I am just grateful for this. This has been really wonderful. I listen to the podcast all the time. I love it. It just inspires me to put my brush down or my silk screen and dig into some of this business stuff because it's really important.
That makes me so happy to hear, like that people actually get something from it. That's why
love it.
Like I do it for selfish reasons, but at the same time, I like that other people actually get something from it.
Dude, brother, I'm telling everybody, all my artist friends, I'm like, this podcast will blow your mind. It's amazing.
All right. Thank you again.
Yeah.
And we are done. Welcome to Ballsy.
For
those who have the balls to make art.